Viewer discretion is advised.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the New to Wrestling podcast After Dark. Tonight, we're getting into the legacy, the life, the career of the one and only Dynamite Kid. Well, I guess not the one and only anymore, girl.
But
Because
I guess
now
not, right? Yeah.
we got the nephew coming out the woodwork, wrestling under the exact same name. In his defense, he has
The
legally
exact
the
same
exact
name.
same name. Xavier and I were talking before this, and we'll get into it at the end, but I was like, everyone in this family, the way I was trying to figure out the family tree, and this is not a diss, this isn't shade, this isn't me being mean, but like everyone in their family is named like Tom or Mark.
No, literally.
I'm like, who is the father? Who's the uncle? Who's the son? It was like, but
No, it's like my
whatever.
family and like Jose's. There's like, for some reason, always 8,000 of them.
Yes,
So,
it's my family and Nicholas's.
gotcha. For
So
sure.
it's like
Just...
Nick, Nikki, Nicholas.
Mhm.
So I get it too, I guess. I can't judge. But we're going to get into the After Dark episode about the Dynamite Kid, and then Xavier also provided me with a little wrestling education treat for me and the masses, and we watched a match of the OG Dynamite Kid and the debuting match of the Dynamite Kid at AEW
Yes. Against Dax Harwood.
Yes.
Which is sorry, funny. This is
go
actually
ahead.
will be our first AEW match that we talk about, something that isn't.
Oh my God, yeah.
So we've you know, we started mainline, WWEF. We've adventured out into ECW land. We got quite the education from both Woody and Robert on a myriad of different organizations. But this is the first time we're going to see an AEW match, because just, there's so much wrestling that it's hard to get to it all. But
yeah, I have seen this is our first AEW match for the show, but I have seen AEW wrestling because we used to watch it, and I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but that's actually like I used to go to your house and we would watch AEW Dynamite. Yes. Yep. Apropos, because it's the Dynamite Kid episode. But we used to watch it, and I actually recognized Dax because I used to say, like, that guy looks like an old-timey barber with that mustache. I remember saying that, and I recognized him. I was like, oh yeah, that guy.
Oh my God. And his tag team partner, Dash. Yeah. No, is it Dash? Cash. He goes by Cash.
Because Dax and Dash would have been
crazy.
I can't tell if I love it or hate it, but I don't have to choose.
But he is like, if I could build a man from the ground up, it'd be that man.
Was he the one on the sidelines during the match?
Okay, yes, sir.
Yeah, I see it. I get it. So we're going to go through the After Dark episode first. Then we're going to get into the matches after we know more about the Dynamite Kid, if you don't know anything like me, and on his continuing legacy via his family. Crazy. So this episode, we see some familiar faces in this episode, which I'm so hyped because now I actually know who Lance Storm is. Like I knew he was a professional wrestler, but now I have context, and literally to describe him, they show the clip of him fighting Rob Van Dam. And I was like, okay, work. It just thrills me when those moments happen because I'm like, oh my God, here I am. I'm learning. I'm understanding. I'm making connections and like whatever.
It's nice when you get the references. It's like when you watch a show when you're like older, like a kid's show when you're older, and you're like, oh, they like were sneaking all kinds of things I didn't even realize. It's like it's fun when you like are watching other wrestling things in the wild and you're like, I know that one. Yes. I know that one.
I super feel like that Miranda Cosgrove meme where she's just like looking at the computer, she's just like, interesting. That's how I feel. And thank God. So the Dynamite Kid, I'm sure as many of you know, but he is considered by many, especially pretty much everyone in this episode, the blueprint for the modern style of pro wrestling. He is, I think it's Mick Foley that says like many have used him as the blueprint, but no one will ever do it quite the way that he did it.
Right.
And I think people were saying like he had this really intense small man syndrome. He was only 5'8", and this need to be perfect was fueled by the fact that he was much smaller than a lot of other wrestlers. So he felt like he had to really elevate his style, and he for sure did. And I think Lance Storm's opening statement of he left a positive impact on the business, and he like really emphasized business is like encompasses what is to come in terms of his personal life and everything else that goes on in his career.
I really respect Lance because he's very
Me
much
too. Me
he's
too.
very much like, I will give you your flowers for what you did as far as like how you helped, work,
Yes.
but I'm not going to praise the person.
Yes.
He does a very good job of that.
I think that wrestlers, and this could be totally wrong, but Mick Foley has a really amazing ending statement to this episode that obviously now I'm realizing is harkening back to the beginning. Love when they do that, obviously. Where he talks about how wrestlers really like are very have a really intense philosophy about separating the art from the artist.
Mhm.
Like wrestling is art, and they literally put their bodies on the line, and then like what goes on behind that, like sometimes it's just like you can't even
Yeah,
think
he
about
also like likens it to just the general concept of
of art.
art separating art and
Yes.
artists is just like, um he's like, a lot of times, like, artists are great at only the thing that they are known for. So they are usually
Mm-hmm.
lacking in other areas of their life, which is why they lean into this thing that they're really great at.
Right.
So he's like, that's not uncommon. Like, it tends to be that way a lot of the time. If you look at like really successful a lot of really successful artists and musicians, but not necessarily the best people.
Oh my
It's
God, no, horrible.
right. So we,
Usually.
you know,
No, totally, and such a good point. Completely good point. And I think, that's a conversation that goes on all the time.
all the time. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We also meet Michelle Billington, who's the former wife of the Dynamite Kid. I have a note that says eyeliner is so fly. I love her because she is an eyeliner girly just like me.
Mhm.
Literally in the whole episode, she has this gorgeous, perfect, thick black eyeliner. I know this isn't really important, but it is to me. Thick, obviously, thick black eyeliner, and in all her old photos, all the old things, it's that same thing. And I was like, I resonate with that. You find your thing and you just lock in and then you perfect it.
Mhm,
And I was like,
mhm.
yes, go off, queen. We also meet Julie Hart, who was married to Bret Hart, who was Michelle's sister.
Yes. So
Uh,
this whole family is uh quite quite all over the place. So okay, do we want to break down the family trees just for the sake of,
like for right now, like for
for the
later.
like going on, and just where we are with the other players that we know, as far as the show?
Yes. Okay. So Michelle and Julie are sisters.
Correct.
Michelle is married to the OG Dynamite Kid. Julie is married to Bret Hart.
Correct.
Both of them at some point end up getting divorces from those partners. But Dynamite Kid
Hmm.
has two sisters and one brother. The brother is named Mark Billington. He, at one point, this is just a quick tidbit, I'm pretty sure at one point he was married briefly to Bret Hart's very first wife. A lot of mixing. But
Yes.
Mark Billington had at least two sons that we know of. I could not figure out his wife's name. If anyone can find it, let me know. But he had two sons, Mark and
Tommy.
Tom. So it's like Tommy and Mark were brothers, and now Tommy and Mark are brothers.
Right.
So it's just like when I was trying to figure out, because unfortunately, Mark Billington Sr., OG Dynamite Kid's brother,
Brother.
died
Correct.
last year. So, but his sons sometimes wrestle, from what I can understand, they sometimes wrestle as a tag team called the Billington Bulldogs. Obviously, a play
Correct.
off of the British
British
Bulldogs.
Bulldogs. And when
And
they
yes,
team with Davy Boy Smith's son,
I
they go
saw
by like
this
the new British Bulldogs. And the OG Dynamite Kid is cousins with
with,
Davy Boy Smith,
yes,
who is also brother-in-laws with Bret and Owen Hart.
Hart.
Um, is that all the characters? Is that the family for right now?
We can get into then like the Dynamite Kid. We will go into it. They have kids. Him and
Right.
Michelle have kids together, but
Hmm.
the son off the grid. I respect it. You can't find anything about him anywhere. God bless.
Hmm.
And he was not in the documentary, but the two daughters will meet and we'll talk about those experiences. But I think those are the main players I'm aware of that are important in
Right.
this episode.
Cool.
Okay. If
All
you can
right,
keep up with
everybody.
that, God bless. Thank
Yeah,
you
no,
so much for
yeah,
staying with us. It's tricky.
yeah.
So there was a very close relationship between the two sisters, Michelle and Julie. And when they went to a wrestling match, Julie saw Brett, love at first sight. They end up getting married. Michelle moves in with them. And then by proxy, because they're obviously her sister's married to a very, renowned wrestler, ends up meeting Dynamite Kid. They also fall in love, married at 18.
Married at
Or at least,
18.
okay, so Michelle was 18. I found out in case anyone was like creeped out if there was a creepy age difference. There wasn't. He was, I think, 22.
Gotcha.
I think they were 4 years apart, 4 or 5 years apart. So it's not like
It was
really
just a
weird.
more common thing to be married
Yeah.
younger. It just was. Also, context, all of this is happening in Stampede Wrestling in Canada. All of this
Yes.
like meeting, falling in love, Brett and Dynamite like fighting each other, blah blah blah. All of this is in Stampede Wrestling, which the Harts are well known for. So
Right. So they were married. They were apparently very happy. Michelle in present day reads an old letter from Dynamite Kid. And it was very sweet. It was like they had just been married, but he had to go back out on the road. And he was saying, like, I want to share a secret with you. It's that, like, really hope we have kids very soon because when I'm away on the road, I just wish someone was there to take care of you and like protect you and make sure you always come. It was like very sweet. She got very emotional reading it. Um, and their first daughter, Bronwyn Billington, is born shortly after they are married. So Bronwyn recalls like they had a wrestling ring in their backyard, which is crazy. And she was like, yeah, I was just like hanging out with Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth when I was a kid, and they had all these pictures of them together, and I was like, oh.
right.
So crazy. Because to me, now that I know more, I'm like, Miss Elizabeth is just like royalty to me. Like she is like wrestling's like Princess Diana to me, and I will die on that hill. Fight me if you want. So then we get into how Amaris comes into the picture later, but she is the youngest daughter. So it was Bronwyn, and then they had a son who we'll get into, and then Amaris.
Right.
So yes, they're Stampede wrestlers, top performers at this time. Mick Foley says, but beyond Stampede Wrestling, Tommy Billington did insane work with Satoru Sayama.
Satoru Sayama.
Okay, who is the original Tiger Mask?
Yep.
Which I knew some things about the Tiger Mask, and it's this like insane legacy from what I understand.
Yes.
Okay. But Mick Foley's like, I watched that VHS so many times that it broke because it was just so insane. And it wasn't necessarily what they were doing, but how fast and clean they were doing it. And I thought it was interesting that he mentioned it was the excellence of execution of how he did it, like verbatim.
Yeah. And it goes to show like that this is the just like the explosiveness, just the technicality of it all, is like we said, it is the introduction to like modern wrestling. All of the wrestlers that are under the like the wrestling school of like the Harts and the British Bulldogs, like this is like how wrestling alters from that like land of the giants to what we know it as today. This is like the one of the first people to really have to do it. To really have to like, and you can like find interviews with like Shawn Michaels also. He's like, when you're smaller in this business, like you have to do more. Like you just to make it look believable, you just have to do more. You have to be willing to like do the extra step to make it look good because you don't have the luxury of it just being like, oh, he's big, so it must hurt, you know? So
yeah, for sure. And I know that there are other Dynamite Kid documentaries out there that we can watch, but maybe not necessarily for the show, but just like for pleasure. But because I wish they had gone into more about how he got into wrestling, like as somebody who is, considered small for the business, like how to get such a love for it. Like, and obviously he's around people who like the Hart Foundation or like, the Hart Dungeon. Like obviously he's in the family, and so that makes sense. But I wish they'd kind of gone into more of his like history of how he got into it. But again, there's more documentaries out there we can watch about him, but they just didn't get into it in this particular one. Then we meet another familiar face, Dave Meltzer. He's the editor of the Wrestling Observer. He has podcasts. He's like a wrestling historian. And he said the matches he did in Japan opened the doors for people like Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, etc. And Mick Foley says, he was amazing, but he wasn't a magician. If it looked good and it looked like it hurt, it's because it probably did.
Right.
Like he had no regard for his body. Like
Mm-hmm.
he was willing to do anything, like you said, to just like be seen, be like amazing, be above, not above, but like to stand out.
Mm-hmm.
And it works because in 1984 he signed to WWF with his cousin Davey Boy, Bret Hart, and Jim the Anvil Neidhart.
Neidhart. Yep.
Neidhart. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So if
Um
you, I don't know if you know wrestling today, but no, I mean, I just don't know
I'm
how
like,
much
girl.
you, whatever. His Jim the Anvil Neidhart's daughter is still wrestling to this day. Um, she goes by the Boat, the best of all time.
Oh, I do know her.
Natty, yeah, Natalia.
Yes.
That's Jim the Anvil Neidhart's daughter. So that's one of Brett's like nieces. So she is also related to this whole clan.
Girl. The family tree they've created. What's in the water up there, honestly? Or
I
what's in that
listen, these
dungeon?
Bretts, like how like we talked about like The Rock and his whole family. Like there are
Yes.
many wrestling, like there are a few wrestling families. Like
Yeah.
Hart's, that whole deal. You have
The roads.
the Rhodes. You have the whole like Anoa'i family, which is like The Rock's whole deal. Yeah, the Rougeaus were big in France rather.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because well, we'll meet him later, but like flash forward, like he does commentary like for the WWF in the beginning of like when we
I
started
loved
watching
him.
this show. When we started doing our show, like when they cut to the French commentators, the the Rougeaus, like that's one of them.
What?
Yeah.
I love when these things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Again, love making the little connections, the little synapses in my brain are just like
Absolutely.
like so nice. Um, yeah, love that. Yeah, it's funny. Sorry, tiniest sidestep.
No,
I
please.
saw wrestling. I was on Depop today and I saw wrestling like trunks for sale and they said boat on them. And I was like,
I
that's
didn't get it.
crazy. And then now I'm like, oh, that's right. Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Love that. Might be purchasing those from Depop. Who knows? Um, but to keep up with WWF, tale as old as time, Tom starts doing steroids to keep up with, all the big dudes. So we meet Spivey,
Spivey. Mm-hmm.
Dan Spivey, um, who is a pro wrestler. He was so crazy. Like his voice, insane.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he is still so huge,
Mm-hmm.
scary. But he's a pro wrestler, friend of the Dynamite Kids. I just see scary, lol. But he was so candid, and I love this. I love the Dark Side of the Ring episodes because I feel like the wrestlers get so candid. They're just
Mm-hmm.
like themselves. Because he was like, this man was just a pure ball of muscle. He was just Mighty Mouse. He had striations in his ass. Just his
Yeah.
ass was like so muscular. Um, and then we meet Gary Ports, who was Scott McGee, professional wrestler. And so
Mm-hmm.
they kind of three really became the three amigos, were like besties. And Gary Port says every day was Christmas, every day was a party. Like we just latched onto each other. We just really got along. Um, and they start talking about, we would do shots of steroids, throw them into the wall like darts and leave them there. And like one time they were
Crazy.
leaving a hotel room and there were just 10 needles in the wall, which is
Bonkers.
so crazy.
Which is just
But
an insane amount of steroids to just be like doing. Like
yeah.
just to be
And those
doing
are
as like
just
a party drug, which is crazy.
well, that's what really gagged me is like they're talking about they were like we would walk into each other's rooms and shoot each other up with the steroids. I'm like, steroids are not like oh, now I'm high. You know what I mean? Unless like I mean, obviously I've
I
never
don't
done
know.
steroids. Like
Yeah.
I have no idea, but I was like, that is just like you said, it's like it's weird for it to be perceived as a party drug.
Or at
But that's
least to be
kind of
used in conjunction with the party. You know what I mean? I doubt that they were
yes.
like, we're gonna like, take a bunch of steroids and like go to town. But like I'm sure once they were like messed up already, they were like
Yeah, it's
so
totally. What the things that would have gone on, this is one thing I'm like actually ignorance is bliss. I don't want to know. I don't want
right.
to know like explicit details because we do know some, but like that was enough for me. But So the tag team of the Bulldogs, who's Davey Boy and Dynamite Kid, breakout hit. Everyone wanted to be them. Like the other wrestlers were like, I mean, they were just sensational. Like we idolized them. Then we meet Jacques Rougeau.
Rougeau.
Rougeau. Okay, sorry, I'm really struggling with my pronunciations today. I loved him, even though he felt extremely insane to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love that guy.
This
But
whole
I also,
scenario was crazy.
yeah, so he says Dynamite Kid just walked in with a needle hanging out of his butt, and he goes, it was literally going like this. And I was
Yeah.
like, I did not need the visual, thank you.
He's like doing the like pencil trick with it.
Yeah, and I was like, no. And would scream, I'm gonna have a great match tonight. Like scream. And he goes, I was afraid of him. I was
Right.
afraid of guys like that who were just like crazy like that. Um, but they end up becoming the British Bulldogs become the tag team champs at WrestleMania 2, which is the match that we watched today. So crazy. So now, this was an interesting fact. Like now he said that now, that he was at the pinnacle, he wanted to put people through the type of intense training that he went through. Because
Training
apparently he has,
is a general, like, is a nice term.
yeah,
Yeah.
training is
Hazing
gentle.
is what he wanted to put people through.
Yeah, I mean, literally, first of all, the place is called the Snake Pit. I mean, it
Mhm.
wasn't like cupcakes and rainbows over at the Snake Pit. Sounds
Right.
crazy. But literally Mick Foley, who to me is like a human crash dummy,
Hmm.
no regard for his body, goes, they were guys who knew how to hurt you in a hurry.
Yeah.
And like that's Mick Foley. Like that's,
Hmm.
mankind Cactus Jack. Like he's
Right.
not, afraid to talk about taking a lick. So like I don't know. But he tells this story. He says, I can't say for sure, but I'm assuming Tommy had the crap beat out of him. And I think it created in him a resiliency and also maybe a little bit of a bitterness towards people who hadn't endured what he had to make it through. And I found out firsthand.
Hmm.
So he talks about this match. It's literally his second, like,
Ever.
actual official match in Providence, Rhode Island. And he is at this moment, he's Jack Foley. His tag team partner is Les Thornton,
Hmm.
against the British Bulldogs. And he's like, I'm just excited to be in the ring with my hero. Like I'm like just so whatever. And then Dynamite Kid does what becomes kind of a signature clothesline for him. And they talk about it actually in his nephew's match, where it's like
Hmm.
he throws him into the ropes, and instead of like meeting him with the clothesline like halfway in the ring, he is right there on top of you.
Yep.
It is very jarring.
Hmm.
And he goes, he didn't so much as clothesline me other than like ram his whole bicep into my jaw so hard. And I didn't realize, but that'd be the last time I ate food for 3 weeks because I didn't know at the time he had dislocated my jaw,
Right.
which I can't imagine the adrenaline that's pumping through your veins because like first of all, you're Mick Foley, so you're like borderline impervious to pain.
Hmm.
But two, like it's your second match. You're probably so excited. These are the British Bulldogs. Like you love and adore them. And like you're just like not even like in your body to the point where you don't even realize your jaw is dislocated.
Right.
How did it? Because at the end he goes, yeah, I thanked them. And I go, how? Your jaw was dislocated. Like, how did you
Right.
even get the words out? Like, that is crazy. But yeah, he dislocates his jaw. He says it was almost a career ender for him, and he'd only had 2 matches. But he was like, it was no hard feelings. I literally said it was an honor wrestling with you guys. I went back to my hotel room and barfed.
Hmm. Sounds like McFoley.
Sounds like McFoley. But he says Tom had an appetite for violence that started trickling into the locker room and in his personal life. Um, Then they have this like tiny brief interlude where they show the daughters of the Dynamite Kid showing off his costumes. And I don't know why, like I'm glad that they did, that they still have it, they still
Hmm.
cherish it and care about it, but it was a random interlude going like the violence trickled into his family. Here are dad's costumes, they're almost in mint condition, like la la. And then
Hmm.
it went into like all the like beef he had with Jacques.
Right.
I was like, okay. Which was cool to see. Literally, he goes, yeah, his name's in it, just said kid, which I
Hmm.
liked. But Jacques Rougeau says, I liked the Bulldogs, but I saw some things that changed my opinion about them. And this really freaked me out that they said, oh yeah, he used to halcyon people.
Yeah.
Like, so casually. Gary's like, yeah, he used to halcyon people. He even halcyon my mother.
Right.
Like, too casual, that was
Too
said.
casual to be
Too
just
casual
like
about talking
sleep
about drugging
drugging people.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you guys don't know, halcyon is like a sleep medication. It's like a
Yeah.
sedative,
Mm-hmm.
basically. So mixing it with alcohol is also just, you're not supposed to do that. Like, don't do that. So he would just randomly drug people, don't really know why. But there was this wrestler called Mitch Snow. And apparently he was a guy who talked a lot of smack. And he, had a mouth on him, and Dynamite took that personally, I guess. And Dynamite Kid halcyons him. So he's passed out in his room. He and Davy Boy break in via the balcony. They crap into his bag and then shave his head and eyebrows in his sleep.
Crazy.
Which is just crazy. And I'm sorry, like cause Dan is like, it was supposed to be a joke and like it was supposed to make people laugh, and like this kid ended up having a nervous breakdown or whatever. And I was like, it's not okay, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm being like too like PC, but like that is not funny to me. Like that is like legit hazing.
No, yeah, it's not
It's
amusing.
like super not funny, right? Like I was like, am I like getting too like old? And I'm like, that's not okay. Like
No,
I was
no,
like that
it
in no
is
scenario is that funny at all.
right. Well, we all, yeah,
This because the crapping in the bag is one thing. That's a whole gross other thing. But also, like, if you're a wrestler who is like you perform in front of people every day, and now you're saying this kid has to go out there and no eyebrow shaved head for no reason.
for no reason other
And
than
that's
like
a
you wanted your
random,
giggles. Like, yeah,
I just hate that. So yeah, the kid has a nervous breakdown, goes back home, and apparently just like lived in fear of his life. I don't know
yeah.
whatever became of him.
Mm-hmm. Mm,
Really crazy. And even Jock is like, it's funny now, but it wasn't funny then. And it's like, I don't think it's funny now either, to be honest, but I guess he had to be there. But
right,
he goes, but it isn't funny after being on the road for 23 days. And it's not funny after you lost your bags earlier that week. And it's not funny when you haven't seen your kids in 20 days. It's not funny because it's not easy.
right.
And I was like, that's true. Like, imagine being at your wits' end. Like, you're more tired than you've ever been in your life. And then you
Mm-hmm.
get drugged and your head shaved and your eyebrows shaved, and someone craps in your only worldly possessions that you have.
Right. Yeah.
I too
No,
would have a
he,
nervous
yeah, it was
breakdown.
like he was they were bullies. It's no, for no other way to like shake it. It's like he had his handed to him, so he feels
Mm-hmm.
the need to turn around and give it back. It's
And
it's it's classic bully behavior.
it's so true. And I'm not gonna lie, I hate that behavior.
Well, yeah,
I'm like, I don't know. Just
it's because we have seen 8,000 examples of why that doesn't work.
thank you so much. Thank you.
Right.
I'm sorry. I was like, maybe people are gonna be offended by that, but I don't care. Like, I just make a better decision. I'm sorry. Heal your traumas. There's tools now. We know about things. Like,
Yeah, but
you're
you
more
also have to take
educated.
into like it is not the time it is
Oh
now.
no, then yeah. No, 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 no.
I was like,
That's
this is
different. I'm saying
19.
now.
Yeah, I was like, this is
Yeah.
like 1980, whatever. Like,
Oh yeah. No coping mechanisms other than drugs back then.
right,
So
right.
that's I mean like now. Okay.
Right,
But
correct. I'm right there with you.
word. So Michelle says, I didn't see any of that sadistic behavior when we were dating, or within the first 5 years of our marriage. Like that didn't happen at all. She says things started to take a turn when he got back surgery. So in 1986, he does a seemingly harmless drop down with his opponent after years of being punished past its limits. I'm so sorry. After years of his body being pushed past its limits, it just gives out. His
Right.
body just absolutely gives out. Um, and it is when you watch it, it wasn't even televised. That's also crazy. Like it was a black, what is it? A blackout
A dark
match?
match?
A dark match. Um, is a dark match, and he literally does something that seems so simple, and he just like literally
Yeah.
seizes and falls. It's so crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And he needs immediate emergency back surgery. And his fourth and fifth lumbar were shredded, were the exact words.
Right.
All his discs were tangled in his spinal cord.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
It's
don't
insane.
even I,
It is from your muscles being so big that the strain on the ligaments and things holding them together, becomes too great so that any kind of like sudden impact will just tear it all apart. Like it is just, it is not sustainable. Like you can't, you cannot just keep making your body bigger when you're like, you physically cannot handle it. Like he was only so big. Like he could only like handle so many steroids. Eventually, this is what was going to happen.
Yeah, and like that and doing all those like moves where you're just legitimately taking hits, like you're not even trying to like soften it because he was so intense, like just hitting the mat, doing the suplexes, like it just like all of those things in combination, like of course your body would just like one last straw breaking and you just be like dink and like
Right.
seize up and fall, like obviously. But I did not know that this was a thing. They removed 2 discs from his back. I didn't know you could just take him out. Not that you should, but like I didn't know that was a thing where that was
It,
somehow.
it's usually not a like a it's never any doctor's like first choice.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I just was like, they're like, yeah, they removed 2 discs. I was like, whoa. And he wasn't supposed to work ever again.
Correct.
Ever again. Literally, they were
Right.
like, no, you're done. Career killer. And he was like, bet. Went back in 2 weeks.
Right.
Career ending injury. And he was like, nah, 2 weeks in. Like
Mm-hmm.
crazy. So Dave Meltzer talks about how Vince really needed to take the titles off of him because even though he was back, quote unquote, he couldn't wrestle. He was basically in a wheelchair.
Right.
So off camera, Davey Boy carries Tommy into the ring. He gets like hit with a megaphone or something, immediately knocked out.
Mm-hmm.
Davey does the match, loses, titles are taken away.
Right.
So then Dynamite is immediately put back in the wheelchair and taken to Gary Portz's house. And he has to sleep on the floor because it's the only way he's comfortable. Like, Gary was like, I had a bed, but he literally was only comfortable on the floor. And he stayed with us for a few days. And my wife would just hear him crying all night long. Like he was in absolute agony, like just
Right.
excruciating pain. Um, and despite doctor's orders, he rushes to return to the ring. Wrestling in agony, his temper begins to spiral out of control, and it really
Yeah.
starts affecting his home life. And it's really scary. The producers or whoever's interviewing the guests is like, so we know about this is to Gary. They're like, you know about all the good times between Tommy and Michelle, but did you ever witness any of the bad times? And like Gary has to like literally take a second and be like, yeah, I saw it. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh my God, like
Yeah.
so scary. And through and through, I do want to mention this. Michelle, she's very honest about what happened, but she's also very honest about the fact that she really still loves him. Like you can tell that because when she talks about him, like she doesn't mince like what happened, but
Correct.
she's not like he's a monster. And like there's no air of like anger or whatever. Like she just to her, I feel like it's just a person who had a very tragic like misfortune kind of thing or after
Yeah,
pushing
it
herself
was.
far.
It was like a she says it like really well later, but she's like blame like don't blame like him, blame like the situation,
The
like or like the yeah.
situation.
He's like she's very much like no, like the like I'm not gonna like sugarcoat it as far as like what he did, like he
Mm-hmm.
did what he did,
Mm-hmm.
but he's like, but she was also very adamant about being like, what good does that do to just hold on to that forever?
So
um
true. So
and
true.
like I don't, and her children said it. She's like she never spoke badly about him.
Yes.
So like, and it wasn't until like all of this was going to air on television that she even like told her children. So
Mm-hmm.
she really protected them, and kind of created this image of their father that they could like hold on to through their childhood, um,
Yes.
before shattering that illusion. But still,
Mhm.
um,
But she gave them the opportunity to not figure it out for themselves, but then be able to formulate their own opinions based
mhm,
on the facts.
right,
Not that she's telling them when they're so young, it's like that's the impression I have forever. And like obviously it's a complex, nuanced situation,
right,
but I just feel like it was I have a lot of respect for her because I feel like the fact that she did this then gave her children the opportunity, the space, the opportunity and the space to feel how they were going to feel about it. Like
Mhm.
from a place of like, I don't want to say neutrality, but like just they got the facts when they
Right.
were older and able to handle it. And like
Correct.
it's just
Mhm.
interesting. But she tells this story about how, Tommy was home. He wanted to take her out, show her the town. She did not want to drink at the time, and we find out later it's because she thought she might be pregnant. She didn't want to drink. Tommy was apparently a big drinker, so she decided she was like, if I didn't drink, he would be offended. So I got like a tonic with lemon, and I'm like, oh, he'll just think it's a vodka tonic. And for some reason, he decides to like test her and like drinks it and spits it out like it was poison, and is like, "You're not drinking, like what the
Like,
whatever." Like, and he flips out
mhm.
and he wouldn't let it go. He was so mad all the way home. He was playing chicken with other cars, like about to crash into people, turned the last minute and screaming like, "Why would you lie to me? Why would you lie to me?" And she's like, "I just didn't want to drink and I didn't want to upset you. I don't know what the big deal is." We get home. I'm literally about to go to bed thinking it's finally over, and suddenly he flips out and screams like, "Get up," drags me out of bed, throws me in the closet, and is effing stay in there, you little yard dog.
Right.
Closes the closet door.
Mhm.
And she goes, and I just slept on the floor in the closet because I was just so relieved he wasn't bothering me anymore.
Mhm. And I just like the use of the phrase like little yard dog when it was the signature of his like love letter is
Mm-hmm.
so messed up. Like
I, it's funny because when they read that letter, I was like, oh, that's sweet or whatever. And I remember the little yard dog because it's such a random thing to say. Like,
Mhm.
it's not like sweetheart. Like, it's just a random
Right.
one.
No, I mean it's
But
very
the
much like it leans
callback,
into the everything about him.
yeah,
He
the
the
callback was crazy though. I was like,
Mhm.
yikes.
Yeah.
So shortly after, she finds out she's pregnant. So he, from what Michelle says, felt horrible. She has their first son named Marek. Um, and she says that Tom felt so bad he was going through these insane lengths to try and make up for what he did. And Marek was apparently a very difficult baby.
Mhm.
And he was extremely patient with him and like really helped her out. But it did not last long. Like it was just a blip.
Mhm.
Um, and then he really started to take out his rage on another tag team, which ends up being the Fabulous Rougeaus.
Mhm.
I'm always concerned I'm going to mispronounce this word.
It's okay.
Rougeaus. Um, so it's funny when the producers ask her about the Rougeaus, she's like, I'm so tired of talking about this. It's like this is the only thing that ever happened to him, and he had a whole career, a whole life, this is the only thing people ever want to know. And I was like, when I found out what it was, I was like, yeah, because this is crazy. This is insane. Like, of course people want to know about this. But she says, the Rougeaus had this immediate prestige. They were like immediately like very like welcomed and high up. And Tom was old school where he felt like you had to earn your right to have privileges.
Mhm.
So, um, Jacques says, I've always had an, I love how honest he is. I've always had an arrogance about me that made me succeed in the business. I was never a mean person, but I was a person who talked a lot and joked a lot, and not everybody liked to hear jokes, and that may not have helped my cause. And I'm sure he's talking about like, he's talking smack. He's,
Right.
poking fun, la la la. And basically what happens is they jump him in the locker room, or Tommy does. But is this when they say perfect, are they talking about Mr. Perfect?
I what do they reference perfect?
Yes.
Then
They
yes.
said say
Kurt Hennig is yeah.
they say he goes, Jacques says perfect was waiting for me in the locker room. And I'm
Mhm. Oh
assuming
yeah.
that's Mr. Perfect.
Cuz he was also a big like jokester, like prankster person. He big on that. So they probably bonded over that.
I'm gonna say this. I know it's gonna hurt people's feelings. I do not like that guy. I do not like that guy, and I never did. Check the track. I've never liked that guy. Never seen him wrestle. Never will. Sorry. So basically, Perfect, like, gets in on this thing where he sits at the back of the locker room with cards. And apparently Jacques was a big card player. So he goes, "Oh, Jacques, come play cards with me, la la la." Sits down playing cards, and Jacques like, and then suddenly, wham, across the back of my head, like so hard, blew like a blow that literally took me out of my seat on the floor. He goes, "I get up, hard punch to the face." And it's Tommy. Hard punch to the face. Now I'm on the ground, kicking me in my face. He goes, "I looked like the Elephant Man. Like I literally was so swollen." And he says in the aftermath, he lost 10 pounds in a week because he couldn't eat and he was so anxious and like so upset. And Mick Foley says, he had said later that he wasn't even able to shave just because he was so ashamed of what happened, like being attacked like that he couldn't even look himself in the mirror. Not even because his face was messed up. Like he just couldn't look at himself in the mirror.
This feels like a lot, but I don't
like
know.
a lot. I mean,
like,
it's a lot of male pride. Sorry.
no, literally though. You know what I mean? I just like I couldn't look myself in the eye. It's just like okay.
Girl, shave your face. Shave your face, girl. It's fine. You're okay.
Right.
You took a beating after you were ambushed. Like it's gonna be fine. But this is crazy because Jacques goes, "I didn't want to do what happened next, but I had to." And the producers were like, "What do you mean?" And Jacques just so dramatic. Love him. He was just like, "Get revenge."
Right.
And I was like,
you know what I
revenge?
mean? See, it's the way that he told this story that like makes me take it with like a grain of salt because like the fact that this man like really relished in telling the story of a guy that's been dead for a hot minute.
That's actually a
You
good
know what
point
I
now that you
mean?
say
It
that.
is like it's like
Yeah.
okay, like that's why I'm like I take it with a grain of salt because like you went on like you're literally on somebody else's like documentary and like you're just like so stoked to tell this part of the story and you're like right, but we're talking about how like this guy like messed up his life, had a tragic ending, and like you know what I mean?
Totally.
So it's like why are you so like stoked about it? Like I get
That's
it,
what
like
I
he beat you up, but like you should also not be so thrilled to be like, yeah, I did what I did next. So like
No, honestly true. And at first, because I'm trying to look up what his sign is right now because I'm like, you know what? That's a good point. I'll look up this later and let you guys know because I'm like, I have theories. But now I'm like, that is a good point because at first I was like, I love how he told the story because me AF, like the drama, the suspense, though I had to do it.
right.
Revenge. I would probably do that. Like horrible.
Fair.
But then when you were like, it's a dead man's documentary, I was like, ooh, actually, now that you say that, this is pretty terrible. Like, at least feel a little upset about it. I guess maybe because he feels like it's like
Regardless of
he hit me first. I don't know.
sure, yeah, I get that, but it's the manner in which the story was told that makes me be all right,
I
like
know.
you're really relishing in your 10 minutes to tell this story because
I
like not for
know.
nothing, but like, do you have a documentary on anything at all? Like, you know what I
Shade. Okay,
mean?
wait. I'm like, but why is that me though?
I-
Spot it, you got it. I'm scared.
so I get it. I get where he's coming from, but to me it just feels like like someone wants to talk to me.
Yeah.
So that's just my 2 cents.
I
Like
love that though, because now that you said that, you've really one humbled me. Thank God I need it. Two grounded me in reality.
thank you.
That's really true, actually. But so Dave Meltzer says Jock wasn't some sort of street fighter or anything. He just felt that he needed to get his respect back. Again, this is very much like male
Pride,
ego, la
yes.
la la. Okay, so Jacques' father, who by the way, was a professional wrestler, also, like you said, the family, and was his trainer, like was his primary trainer, told him, he goes, before you go into work, get a roll of quarters from the bank. I was like, oh no, girl. That's
That's
like
crazy.
that's the discount brass knuckles. Like if you don't
Yo,
want to pay.
literally.
But then later, Gary Ports for some reason goes, I'm pretty sure it was the actual brass knuckles, like the hearsay, quarters, brass
Right.
knuckles. The
Well,
quarters
that's
make the
become
stories.
I feel like it's like it's a different brass knuckles. That is legitimate assault. I mean, granted, quarters all the same, but
Mm.
like you might be able to finagle.
Jacques allegedly gets quarters or brass knuckles. Jury's out. And he waits for him to come to work. He's like, I'm just waiting in front of that curtain, waiting in front of that curtain. And he comes in And I said, it was the first time I had spoken to him in I don't even know how long. And I just go, hey, how are you? And he goes, and he was holding coffee or something, and he like leans back and like smiles, like, which like silly response to that, but okay.
Right.
And Jacques just, when he leans back, smiles, just like punches him like right, like
Yeah.
nice uppercut. And he goes, this was like crazy. This was like this man might be insane. He was like, you know, when you're a kid and you watch monster horror movies and like people get hit in the blood, it's just like it just like spurts like a river. It's true. I was like, ugh. Like
You know
I
what I'm
was like,
saying? Like really editorialized. Like really
yeah,
like,
you're not wrong actually. Um, in the moment though, when I was watching, I was like,
right.
scary. Like he really he took me on a ride. This is why we're friends, because literally you'll be like, this is dumb. And I'll be like, you know what it is. Now that I be getting caught up in the ride. That was like
No,
when the
I mean
ref got pulled in
you can
from
have your own opinion. I'm just like this is a lot of grandiose details
I
for
know.
like a story of like he beat me up, I beat him up back, you know?
Yeah. I mean, my God.
Mm-hmm.
So he knocked 4 teeth out of his mouth in one hit though, and that's pretty crazy.
Right.
Um and Dynamite Kid is screaming, like, I'm gonna F you up, I'm gonna F you up, through a mouthful of blood and missing teeth. And Jacques, this did not age well, goes, next time I'm gonna put you in an effing wheelchair.
Yeah.
Did
Irony.
not, spoiler alert, didn't age well.
Right. Correct.
Really crazy. Um, Michelle, this is interesting. Michelle was like, I don't think that what Tommy did warranted this. Like, I don't think it was right, but I don't think that he should have lost 4 teeth for it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I feel about it. It's like, you jump me first. Don't be
Like
upset if I jump you back.
right.
Like, I don't
I
know. I
agree.
don't,
I'll
and
give him that. Like you can't just do that and expect nothing. That's crazy. But like um yeah, I mean, but
and it's not
she's
like he,
biased, you know, like she has a
of course,
bias. You
of
know what I mean?
course.
We have to say that.
Yeah, and it's not like he went in with the intention of like, I'm specifically gonna knock your 4 teeth out. Like he just was like, I'm just gonna hit you, whatever. But
Right.
I mixed feelings. Um, Dan goes again, this whole macho man thing. Tommy couldn't handle it. His reputation had been damaged. Being the guy who's tough as nails, getting abused like that, he wanted to beat the shit out of him. And I was like,
Yep.
okay. Um,
Again, circle the fire, pound your chests, whatever.
yeah, that was the day and age, though. I mean, that was the day and age,
True.
like you said.
Mm-hmm.
So then there's this other character who's introduced. So I guess like the plot for revenge, the trilogy gets interrupted by the fact this man Dino Bravo, who's a wrestler, is allegedly connected to the mob, makes allegedly again makes a threat against the family of the Dynamite Kid. So like Michelle says Dynamite Kid comes home and is like, I got a gun for you. 9mm with it. And she's like, I do not want this gun. Why are you giving me this? And he says, apparently Dino Bravo has like an envelope filled with our address, pictures of our house, pictures of our kids, pictures of you. And like, if I make a single move against Jock, like people are coming to get us or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So they take it so seriously, they end up selling the house and moving because they are so, this threat is so serious. And Tommy is just stewing because then he can't get revenge and he has to just live as being the guy who was beaten or whatever. And I think Dave Meltzer says Jock got his respect back, but Dynamite never got to get his back. But again, it's like, I don't know. So Mick Foley is like, his life was never the same after that. He was just never the same guy. He took it so personally. It like affected his whole, like he just felt, because again, if you think about his mentality, he's the smaller guy and he's like made such a name for himself, like, you know, being different and having this whole style. And then he just gets like beat up in the locker room and now nobody respects him. That does kind of suck in that headspace. Like I could see how
Yeah.
that would be like
Mm-hmm.
really upsetting to me. But when the producers ask Jacques about it, he literally laughs like so hard and he's like, that is so funny. I completely forgot about this. And I have this to share. I don't know if I've ever said this. He goes, but I didn't like Dino Bravo, and I knew Dino Bravo was a stooge for the Bulldogs. Collective understanding, we need to bring back the word stooge. Love
Love
that.
that.
Love the use of the word stooge. Oh, she's stooge for that person.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh, like debilitating.
Spineless. Love it.
Finally, oh, kiss ass, girl. Stooge
Mm-hmm.
crawling. I hate it. Um, but he said, I knew he was a stooge for the Bulldogs. I knew whatever I said to him, he was going to bring it back to the Bulldogs. So he like did this thing where he like wrote a fake name on a piece of paper and a phone number and like showed it to Dino Bravo and was like, see this guy? I have to call this guy every night. And if I don't call him, he takes care of it. So like if something happened to him, like some guy, some anonymous
Right.
whomever is gonna like whatever. And apparently he took it back to the Bulldogs and they were like, that's gospel. I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, my only thing is like he must have been so paranoid from all of the like drugs and like steroids
Mm-hmm.
and whatever that once you like you couple that with just like a sense of like your like manhood has been knocked, they'll fall off the rails, and then men will just crumble. So
That's a
like,
good point.
so I
Because at first
think,
I was like, how did this get so blown out of proportion to the point where we're selling the house and moving?
but you gotta remember he's on a lot of steroids and a lot of drugs.
Wow. Yeah, that's true. And if we
it does not make a you know a, a good mental state.
no, and if you I don't want to compare too much, but if you think about even like Chris Benoit and how he was doing a ton of steroids and drugs and how paranoid he got, where he started taking like alternate routes to the gym and like being
Right.
weird
Well,
and
I
like
mean, but
whatever.
we also like we know like Chris Benoit idolized this man. So like
Oh, true.
the irony that his life ended up much in the same, well, I mean, there are a lot of parallels, um is ironic. So because
Yes.
like that is he ended up following in his hero's footsteps in more ways than he probably intended.
Yes. And I remember when we did the Chris Benoit episode, he idolized the Dynamite Kid so much, and then the Dynamite ended up giving Chris Benoit a pair of his boots. I
Yeah.
remember it was like such like it really was this like crazy
It was like this
relationship.
passing of the torch kind of situation.
Yes. Wow, so crazy. And this is before we started. I was like, oh, I'll save it. I'll save it for the pod. I'll save it when we actually talk. This
Mm.
is what I wanted to talk about, but we'll get into it. Um, but Michelle says, hearing the mafia wants to come and kill your wife and family, made him not want to be a part of the organization anymore. Obviously.
Yeah.
So he leaves WWF in 1988 after the Survivor Series. That's his retirement match, from WWF. Goes back to Japan because he had such success there. Everyone loved him. And Mick Foley says he was really hurting in Japan, but you would never know it as a fan because he was still giving it 100%,
Right.
which is crazy. And Michelle was like, he started to say to me like that his arm was bothering him. It was really bothering him. And later I found out that his ligaments weren't even on the bone.
Mm,
His
yeah.
ligaments weren't even on the bone. And he was like, my arm hurts a little.
Yeah.
It's just like shocking to me. Shocking to
Hmm.
me what they endure. And like,
Well,
I don't, not in a bad way. It's just like
mhm.
blows my mind what people are capable of enduring, is what I'm
Right.
trying to
Well,
say.
it's like part of it's like you're in pain so often. It's like how do you differentiate like a new pain? You know what I
Right.
mean?
We've talked about this before, where it's like, how do you know when's the actual like serious injury? Is like, am I just sore or is this like a career ending, like slip disc, something,
And a
something?
lot of them will just like ignore it for the sake of not wanting to like miss the time.
Of
Um,
course. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
so
of
like
course. Of course.
it kind of leads into that as well.
Yeah. So he ends up getting shoulder surgery to repair that. And a week after his recovery, Michelle saying he was very upset with me because my friend had come over and I had been like, talking to her 'cause she's in my house. And when she leaves, he flipped out and was like, you've just been talking to Sandra this whole time. You don't even care about me. And she's like, what do you mean? Like, of course I do. And then she goes, he started to go like this, which, like, if you're not watching, he started almost like swing back, like he was gonna like hit her. But he was like going like this. And then she goes, but then he just started to take the sling off. And I was like,
I
was
don't
he,
know. I think he was trying to be like you don't care about me. Like, see, like this doesn't even matter. Like, why am I even bothering? Like, I don't think he
oh,
was trying to like strike her. I think he was
because
trying to
he,
make a point to be like, like, oh, like you don't care about me, so like this, like what do you even care about this? Like this doesn't
Okay.
matter, you
Because
know?
she went like this, and I was like, that is what you
It's
look like when
because
you're
his
about to hit
when
somebody.
you're
But
on
he
a when
has
your
this.
arms in a
Okay.
sling, like that's how you raise your arm, like.
Yes. But also, I just, the way she said that, she goes, he was so mad and he started to go like this. So I was like, was he trying to swing? And not that that ever happened. Like, there's no, you
Mhm.
know, but okay, thank you for clarifying. So I was like, was he trying to hit her? But he was inhibited. So he started to take the sling off. But that makes
Yeah,
more
yeah.
sense. So he starts to take the sling off and she's screaming like, no, stop it, no. After all the shit you've put us through and you're trying to set us back and wreck your arm again, I just don't understand. Like, I don't understand this mentality. Like, it's just
Mhm.
insane. um Julie Hart says Tom was slipping deeper and deeper into pills and drinking, and one night he invited me to come watch wrestling, and it was hours and hours of just watching him and Tiger Mask fight and saying like, "Oh yeah, I really took a bump there." Like, "Oh, look, watch this move, watch this move." And she was
Mhm.
like, "And that is the last memory I have with him, like
Right.
of us together." Which is crazy because I
Yeah.
it's like this weird acknowledgement that maybe he's understanding that the best days are behind him, or he's like, even though if he doesn't know it yet,
Yeah.
he's like, "This was my best work,"
Right.
which, is debatable, but where it's just like, yes, let's relive this because this is it. This is the peak of my,
Mhm.
career or whatever. But the producer asked Gary Ports if he thinks something changed emotionally for Tom after the incident with Jacques, and he very ominously answers, well, after that he hit quite a few other people. He broke a lot of jaws. I was like, hmm,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, think
And
about it. If you're a prideful whatever guy with a Napoleon complex, you get beat down, like what is your way? What is your like logical way of getting back on top of that situation? Oh,
yeah,
look at all these other people I have beat up.
yeah, all the bodies I've laid out. Yeah,
Right.
it's true. And Michelle says there was a New Year's Eve where he comes home and he was wearing a white sweatshirt that was basically red because it was covered in blood. He had a cut on his cheek where basically his skin was just hanging off and you could see the bone. And
Mm.
his children are there. And his Bronwyn like cries and asks if he's okay. And he's just like, I just fell down, like I'm fine. And
Right.
it's like, okay. And she says, Michelle's like, I was feeling like, because, the kids, she goes, they hadn't really seen it. And now my kids are seeing it and kind of understanding that like something is weird. Like they're starting to understand like this is not okay. And she goes,
Right.
so I started to really feel like a failure as a mother. And now and she was pregnant again with their third child, Amaris. And she's like, now I'm pregnant again. I'm going to bring another child into this horrible life. And I just couldn't take it anymore, which is so sad. It's so
Right.
sad. um, she says, I became suicidal. I just kept saying I can't live another minute like this. Um, and I just had to do something. So she's like 8 months, 7 or 8 months pregnant at this point. She goes and gives Tom, this is crazy, a one-way ticket to England. She doesn't go like, I want a divorce, I want whatever. She goes, just please leave. Just please go
Duh.
elsewhere and
Right.
leave us be. So gives him a one-way ticket to England. And she says, Tom, I would like you to leave now. Take whatever you need and just go. And that's when shit went down. Um, she says that he flipped out and started dragging her by the hair across the kitchen. So then Bronwyn, because she's old enough and she remembers it, it's like my dad dragged my mom by the hair across the floor, and put her mom in this crazy like jaw headlock
Yeah.
to the point where when he finally let it go, Michelle, crazy, stands up and just goes clink and pops it back in,
Uh,
which is wild.
right.
And Michelle, again, I give her so much credit. She was like, my kids are there, and so he's flipping out and he's literally assaulting me. And I'm trying to stay so calm. I'm just like, Daddy's just having a moment. He's gonna
Hmm.
leave soon. And she goes, and he's like, no, like you're gonna leave. And she's like, I'm not leaving. I am, 7 or 8 months pregnant. Our children are here. All their things are here. Like, I am not leaving. So calm. And
Hmm.
he goes and gets a shotgun from the basement. So he goes, gets a shotgun from the basement and points it in her face. And he says, if you are not out in 15 effing minutes. I'm going to blow your head off. And she just goes, no, you're not.
Yeah.
And he's like screaming, like, yes, I am. Yes, I am. And she's like,
You're
you're
not
not,
though.
though.
Hmm.
You're not, though. Crazy,
Right.
crazy, crazy. And Bronwyn is like, I'm holding my little brother screaming, like, Daddy, no, as I'm watching my dad put a gun in my mother's face. She is so calm. And she goes, I'm going to call the police. With the shotgun in her face, she calls the police and is like, my husband is pointing a gun at me, saying he's going to blow my head off. I'm here with my children, blah, blah, blah. And the woman goes, honey, if he said that you can leave, then just leave.
Which is crazy.
Which is
I can
crazy.
understand that for the immediate,
Immediate.
like in the like get your children away from the crazy man with the gun for sure. Like definitely do that. But
But, and then we're on our way. We're
right,
still coming
right,
because what if you try and walk out the house and surprise he didn't mean what he said and he kills you anyway? Like,
right. You know what I mean?
so stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Just be like, okay, okay, well, like, calmly leave the house. We're gonna send somebody. Like, just remain like, so stupid. Just to me, completely mishandled. So either way, she was like, okay, well, I guess that was my literally only lifeline. So I guess I'm leaving. And like, has to pack up her kids' things, and they go. She goes to Brett's and Julia's or Julie's. And ends up staying with them. And she was like, I didn't want to go there because I felt like I was always going there with my shit, with like my marriage stuff and whatever. But like, I literally had no choice.
Right.
So she goes. And while she's gone, Tom ends up actually leaving also. So he goes back to England in 1991. 2 months later, Amaris is born. And this is so sweet. Michelle's like, I literally felt like I had no reason to live, and she saved all of our lives. She gave us a reason to live, like this new life, this new start, like everything. She
Mm-hmm.
really gave us a reason to live. Um, and so Tom, meanwhile, has his retirement match in Japan, and he writes Michelle a letter saying he was going to come to Calgary, but he never does. So like he basically never meets Amaris, their third child. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because he leaves before she's born, never sees her. And like, as far as I know, because at one point later we'll get into it, Bronwyn goes to see him. Amaris does not come. I keep switching it up, but Amaris does not go. But Michelle says, I think he finally manned up and let us be. Like, for the fact that he wrote the letter, said he was going to come and then never did. She's like, I think he finally just manned up and let us be. I think he knew there was something wrong with him. Like, he was not the same person. And I don't think he had control of his violent impulses anymore. And he knew it was better to stay away from us, which I think is interesting. Um, but then after he retired from wrestling in an organization, he started just fighting in garages, fighting in like random underground circles. Like,
It's just bare
Dan said at
knuckle
one point,
fighting. Just bare
bare
knuckle
knuckle fighting
fighting.
in parking lots, like with just the cars and the lights
Mm-hmm.
on, like just so
Like as if
crazy.
it's Fight Club. Like crazy.
Yes, like insane. And that's apparently how he was getting by, like how he was making money. He was like fighting bare knuckles for money. Um, Dan said whenever I asked about his family, he never mentioned it because it was just a sign. He said it was a sign of weakness to discuss like his family, that he hadn't seen them. He goes, and he just could never appear weak. He could never appear vulnerable. He could not let it go, this like machismo. Like he just could
Mm-hmm.
not release it. Um, then this like even broke my heart. He 5 years after his retirement from Japan, he does like a comeback match.
Yeah.
He looked so bad. And I don't mean bad like he looked bad. I mean like it was scary how like sick and skinny and like just unhealthy he looked.
Right. Yeah. No,
I,
it was not it was, it was like it was very similar to when we saw like Sunny in like ECW just being like high
yes.
out of her mind and like not like you know what I mean?
Not
It was just
there.
like
Yeah.
it isn't what you came to know and love. So it's such a like a jarring image to see the same person in the same context essentially be so different. Uh
Yes.
so yeah.
Yeah, and Dave Meltzer says he was literally the shell of himself, and he looked it. Like he looked, and again, I'm not saying he looked bad as like a Reed. I mean, it's sad to see like again such an icon um fall so far.
Mm-hmm.
And Mick Foley, this is his quote about suspending disbelief, but he says, I think all of us kind of willingly suspend disbelief in order to believe we are in a different reality, um that who we are and between who we are and who we're portrayed as being, and that we are as actually tough, that we are immortal in some sort of way.
Yeah.
Sorry, did that like even make sense?
Yeah,
Did I
yeah,
read it
yeah.
again?
No,
Okay.
it essentially like I love Mick Foley because he's so like I mean if you know how many books he's written, but like if looking at him, you're just like you are so well spoken. like
Anything Mick Foley says is gold. Like his last quote to end the episode, I was like, Mick Foley,
gold. Um
verbal god. He really
mhm.
has all. I mean, you could tell from even his wrestling promos, but any time he says anything, it's almost like it's like a
He understands
Michelin
like the power
star.
of words. Like he gets it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
But this goes like and he you know, he just Mick is essentially talking about just like the weird uh kind of like mental hurdle like wrestlers go over because they like for all intents and purposes are portrayed to the world as like superheroes and villains
Hmm.
and sometimes it is difficult for people to like separate themselves from you know the adulation and
Mm,
whatever
yeah.
so they put themselves in this like and it you know it also it happens a lot just in when you're talking about people like youth this like air of like invincibility that like everything that like affects other people isn't going to get to you
Right.
because you're
Yeah,
different
totally. Hmm.
so it I think Foley's kind of talking about like just he because he had to like put on such an exterior that even after it had cost him pretty much everything the you know facade was basically all that he had left so
Mm,
why would he at that point give it up.
that's a really good point. Yeah. That's crazy to think about.
Hmm.
And especially because like if you are for all intents and purposes on the books like the first to ever do it like that, of course you believe you're different from everybody else, like that
Right,
you are like super impervious to like the things that happen to other people
right.
because like you were like a wayfinder, a
Hmm.
path maker. Like
Hmm.
it makes sense that you would think that. Like really crazy, but yeah,
Right.
such a good point. And this confused me, and I wanted to ask you about this because how he ends up paralyzed from the waist down in this, it was in this comeback match. They didn't really go into it or discuss. And the move that Gary, I think, says like happened, it just didn't, I could not understand. I tried to look up what he was talking about and I could not find information about like how he ended up,
Like
what
re
move he
in
did that
oh
ended up
oh oh
paralyzing him.
oh I'm not sure it very well could be the diving headbutt that you know because I remember they reference in um the Crispin Wall documentary that like that diving headbutt move like Harley Race did it is like messed up his back. Dynamite Kid did it, he ended up in a wheelchair. Crispin Wall
Right.
did it and he goes like insane. So I don't know if that was like necessarily the move, but I think it he just like fully just re-injures himself. like fully just
Yeah,
re-injures his back like back problems.
because Gary said it was like a he goes all intents and purposes simple thing that he run of the mill thing he does all the time, which
Hmm.
you know, and it just like something he just collapsed. Again,
Yeah.
it was again harkening back to what happened with his back before, but he ends up paralyzed from the waist down, and they cannot operate on him because he has accumulated too much scar tissue. So
Yeah.
they're just like,
Too many surgeries, too
that's
many
it.
injuries. Like you can't because you run the risk of doing more damage.
Really crazy.
Hmm.
So that's he ends up paralyzed. Um, Dave Meltzer says it's a tragedy that a guy who changed the entire business of wrestling and how we do it ends up in a wheelchair in his 40s.
Yeah.
Really insane. And Michelle says, you know, I was very sad for him. I still loved him. Like I just didn't like what he did. I didn't hate who he was. I still loved him. I just did not like what he did and how he like acted.
Hmm.
But Amaris says Michelle never said anything negative about him, like what we were saying before. And then the Chris Benoit documentary came out when I was 16 years old, and that was the first time my mom ever talked about any abuse in their relationship. So CNN does this expose about domestic violence perpetrated by wrestlers, and Michelle comes forward and is interviewed on it the night before. Again, I really want to give her props. I feel like she did this right. It's not like she just went to the interview and was like, okay, kids, now you know. She talked to her children before she did it, like the day before, and was like, this is what you need to know before everybody else knows.
Right.
Told them Amaris was very upset, obviously, because this is a person she's literally never met. Like, she was
Hmm.
gone. He was gone before she was born. She's never heard anything negative about him. She always just heard how great he was, that she's a lot like him,
Hmm.
whatever. And then like finding out all of these things, that your mother, while she was 7 or 8 months pregnant with you, was held at gunpoint and dragged across the floor,
Right.
is like really hard to take.
Hmm.
Really hard to take, even at the age of 16, where she's older, obviously now, but like not by much. Like a 16-year-old is still a kid.
Yeah, but there was never a like appropriate time for
Oh no, of
the
course not.
view of your parents to be like fully altered. Like there's never going to be like a great time to do that.
No, of course not. And she says, I was so mad at him, but I was also so mad at my mom because it felt like she lied to me all this time, and I had created this image in my head of him, and it really catapulted a very dark time in my life, like
Right.
reckoning with that and understanding that. And I really feel
Hmm.
for her. It's really crazy. Um,
I am curious as to like if Michelle felt compelled to speak, not just because of like obviously like her experience, but because it was Chris Benoit and because it was somebody
yes,
who so idolized her husband,
a hundred
and took it
percent.
to such a like like an even worse state. You know what I mean? It is like it is it that very much could have been her situation.
Right. No, 100%.
And I think seeing that it like panned out that way for somebody else, especially somebody that she probably like knew and or related to on a lot of levels, was probably like really jarring. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Probably I don't know, I don't want to speak for her, but I wonder if that was a like contributing like reason for why she felt so like compelled to say something when she did.
After all that time,
Right.
after all, basically 16 years.
Hmm.
Um, I think it's crazy that she never said anything before that. And like, again, I give her a lot of respect. She gave her kids time to grow and be their own people. But I agree with you. It's interesting because also I think it's that I wonder too, and I'm not trying to put words in her mouth or read too much into it, but it's like she never spoke about her situation, and that exact or similar situation happened. And like you said, it could have been her. And like, I don't know if she had that feeling of like, should I have said something earlier? Would that have changed like the outcome of certain things? And again, this is like total hearsay. I'm
Right.
not trying to put words in her mouth, but it's like that moment where it's like, even if it's hard to say, sometimes you have to say it because like other people might be going through it.
Hmm.
And like the awareness is important, especially when it comes to like domestic abuse. It's like there are so many people in such insane situations, and like they feel crazy for either
Hmm.
saying or going, or they don't know what to do. And so hearing other people and like what they did, like
Yeah.
it is sometimes good to have that community, even though it's hard to
Hmm.
hear.
And especially in like this community or just generally like when we're talking about just like abuse in like the sports, when you're talking about like such a physical like disparity,
Hmm.
it is all the more like important to like speak about it because it is very easy to be physically like put into silence when you are giving up
Absolutely.
like that kind of like stature and whatever to the person that you're
Completely.
with. So
Completely.
yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not saying like she should have said something earlier. I that's
I
like
mean,
totally her journey.
right.
It is like I agree with you. Like I think that there was probably a lot of factors that were like, you know what, it's like I really should say something, like more people need to know about this. Um which also, I don't know if we want to talk about this now or like later, but it is crazy too that like because I was getting into some rabbit holes on the internet as I normally do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was a lot of like people. So at one point, from what I understand, later in the Dynamite Kid's life, he tries to sue for medical help because he was obviously wheelchair bound. He ends up getting early onset dementia and he's in a medical facility. And like basically every wrestling organization that he ever worked for, like kind of just left him for dead. Like he never received any money, any funds, any health care, any
Right.
aftercare, like nothing. And I was just reading a lot of like people online, like even former wrestlers talking about like, we are forgotten about. Like we give our bodies to this craft, to this art, and then we are just like left
Right.
and like to deal with the aftermath. And so it raises this because then I guess like the WWF like countersued him, or maybe they sued him preemptively before he was able to come after them. It was kind of confusing. Um, but what people were saying was like there needs to be things in place where like wrestlers have healthcare that continues, like the same way that people who retire in like a normal job get like a pension and a thing that like provides them with healthcare for their life and like support for their life.
Right.
And like it created this conversation of like this man who literally changed the face of wrestling is rotting away in a wheelchair with dementia in a facility. And his wife at that time, because he did remarry someone, had to start a GoFundMe for him to
Right.
pay for his medical bills. And that's like shameful. I'm sorry, that's really
Right.
shameful.
And like especially now, when we're talking about like the where do you think the early onset dementia came from?
That's what
From
I'm
getting
saying.
smacked in the head over
Yes.
and over and over again. Like it
Yes.
is a direct cause of like what he did in the ring. And granted, that might have been his style, but it's not like anybody that was work that allowed him to work was like, hey, don't do that. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? It's not
Mm-hmm.
like anybody was like stepping in. And like it's so crazy just because today like the steps in place as far as like from a like performer health standpoint is just night and day compared to what they were doing
Mm,
now, or like what
right.
they were doing then.
Yeah.
Like because it really was like once you were like done, like see ya, thanks for your time.
Bye. That's crazy.
Hmm.
And I'm glad it's changed now. I'm sad of the people who had to. There is literally a website, and this is the website I was diving down, but it's a website literally called like wrestling concussion lawsuits like .com. And it's
Wow.
like or updates.com. It's like just and like about all information about all the lawsuits. And you know who the lawsuit suing or the lawyer suing Dynamite Kid was? McDevitt,
Of course. Yeah, that's the
obviously.
WWE's like
And it was like no proof CTE is a real thing or there's any correlation between why the Dynamite Kid has early onset dementia.
right.
Crazy. And
Hmm.
wrestlers, it's really crazy. There are former wrestlers in the comments like, thank you. Because I guess the man who runs the website, his name is Bill, I believe. And they're like,
Hmm.
thank you, Bill, for never forgetting about us. And
Right.
always like, and I'm like,
Try. Yeah,
God,
it's crazy. It
it's
is
a
crazy.
crazy thing.
Hmm.
That's a whole other thing we could talk about some other day. But just glad it's changed now. But um back to this. Bronwyn, after 15 years, she's like has her own child at this point, and she's like, haven't seen my dad in 15 years, impulsively decides to go visit him overseas.
Hmm.
And she asks her sister if she wants to go and meet her father. She says no. She was like, I was so angry still. I didn't want to meet him, didn't want to know him. I decided not to go. Bronwyn goes, surprises him. She doesn't tell him he's coming. Or she doesn't tell, yes, she doesn't tell him she's coming, and just walks in. She goes, I immediately start crying. And the first words he says to me is, why are you crying, girl? Why am I crying? She's like, why am
Right.
I crying? I haven't seen you in 15 years and you are my
Hmm.
father. And this is the first time I've seen you
It's the
in a
most British
wheelchair.
thing I've ever
I
heard.
swear, why are you crying, girl?
Right.
Um, she goes, but I was there for like 3 days and I was just spending time with him. And after 3 days, like he finally kind of actually like cracked a little bit. She goes, I just felt like I couldn't get close enough to him and he was in this wheelchair. So I literally I grabbed a chair and moved it as close to him as possible. And we were just holding hands so tightly. And he just randomly goes, I'm sorry. And she said it's the only time he'd ever apologized for anything. And I knew in that moment what it meant. And he didn't ever have to say anything else. I just felt it, which crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when the producers, because then I guess not too long after she returns home, I'm pretty sure like not too long after he ends up passing. But he had also he had a lot of health issues too. He had like I said, dementia. He ended up having a stroke. He was in a medical facility. It was like just really, his body was broken beyond repair. Um, so he dies at the age of 60, which is a sin, which is just horrible. And Gary can't even, like, when the prisoner like, do you remember where you were and what happened like the day you found out he died? And he was like, what do you want me to do? Just he gets very emotional. He's like, I can't talk about that. Like, what do you want me to do? Just sit here and cry the whole time? Like, I can't. Very much again that like macho aesthetic, but he's just like, I can't talk about it. Dan says he is like full on like in tears, and he's like, he was a great friend and I miss him. Like, and he just ends it with like, I love the Dynamite Kid, which like really just like got me. Bronwyn says, I knew it was coming and it still shocked me to the point where I didn't cry for a week. Like I was just completely shocked. Like could not believe it was happening. Amaris says I was doing mostly consoling when my mother called me because she was very upset. So I felt like I was doing most of the consoling of her. And then right before we hung up, she said, well, now you know he's right beside you. And we hung up and I just broke down because that's all I'd ever wanted.
Right.
That took me out too, because that's sad. I mean, I think about this whole family, again, all of the wrestling families, all of the wrestlers. I have so much respect for so many of them because like that is such a hard thing to reckon with. The fact that you never met your dad. There's so many people who like laud him as this incredible giant. He's your father that you don't even know because he had to leave because he had this like complicated past with your family, and then you have to learn about like she just went through so much, and then to just say like that's all I ever wanted.
Right. Yeah.
God,
That's brutal.
brutal. That's just like I just want to like I don't know
It's
like
okay, just I'm a child.
it like swear like just a little forehead kiss, and I mean
Right.
that most in the most respectful way, just a little, you deserve that. um Gary does say had called, this really also was so sad. Dan had called Tommy the week before he died, and when he was gonna hang up the phone he said, hey, I love you. And Tommy just goes, why?
Right. That's crazy. Yeah,
That's
that was rough to
so
hear.
that is so sad. So sad. And they don't like extrapolate on that, and I liked that. Like they didn't get into like why he might have felt that way, why he might have said that. They just leave it at that. And I think that was great because it just makes you go like, oh God, like he was really there. It's obvious in his actions he was fighting demons and there was a lot going on, but like he's literally like
Well, he had 20 years to like more so to just literally sit with his actions. You know what I mean? Like that's a lot to you know what I mean? It's not like he could distract himself with other things. It is
It's so true. He could not bury himself in the work.
right.
Like you said, like he'd become this facade and it's all he had, and then he literally didn't even have that.
Right.
And dementia is really like I have a very personal relationship with dementia. It's like it's so hard. It's such a insane Alzheimer's and dementia, such insane diseases, and like what I can't imagine the actual brain of a person who has dementia, of these moments of lucid combined with like moments of like I don't even know where I am or who I am or what I've done, like, and then also trying to reconcile with your past. It's like I can't imagine like the soup that's in your brain like
Right.
trying to process that. So then when someone says I love you, it's like, why? Is it because like you literally don't remember why someone might love you, or like you are trying to understand like after all of the things you've done with your life why someone could love you in spite of those things? It's like, oh God, it just makes you think like so much.
Right. No,
But
yeah,
it just
absolutely.
really rips your heart out. But Dave Meltzer says he does not get as much credit for what he did because his story is not happy. Do you agree with this? Because I kind of do.
Yeah. No, well, he's very much been like it's he's not like discussed really for the most part. Which is I understand because both
Mm-hmm.
he and his like biggest emulator had such tragic ends that it wasn't like it's not a like a reputation you want to just like laud out. You know what I mean? It is
Yeah.
again, he's like it's not a happy story, and it's unfortunate because he was so talented,
Yes.
and the number of incredible people are that fall under the learning tree that was him is ridiculous. It's just littered with world champions, and the
Mm-hmm.
entire style of what we know as wrestling today is in the vein of Bret Hart talks about all the time. He's like, if you look at wrestling today, they don't wrestle like Hulk Hogan. They wrestle like Bret Hart. They wrestle like the Dynamite Kid, the British
Yes.
Bulldog, Owen.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is the basis of wrestling today. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like it is so heartbreaking that he and Mick Foley talks about he sacrificed literally everything
Mm-hmm.
to be good at this. And
Yeah.
he was absolutely phenomenal, but
Yeah.
he sacrificed literally everything. And that is crazy. Like that's something that's difficult to wrap your head around, really.
Yeah. I also think like because we found out about his transgressions under the hype of the Chris Benoit
Mm-hmm.
transgressions, and obviously like you said he's such an Chris Benoit was such an emulator of him. I feel like he that also just got like roped into like we can never talk about him.
Right.
So like which is basically what you said, but it's like it's so interesting to think like Michelle was holding on to that forever, for
Mm-hmm.
so long, and his reputation was intact. And like, and I'm not saying, again, not saying she did the wrong thing, like,
No, no,
again,
no.
her journey. I also, and this might be controversial, but I also feel like the people, so like the people who the things actually happen to, if they have made peace with it, I don't feel like it's my responsibility to continue to hold their anger. Does that make sense?
No, I
Like
agree.
Michelle is like, I've let it go. My kids are better off, like blah
Mm-hmm.
blah blah. Like I don't feel like it's my responsibility to continue to be angry about it,
Mm-hmm.
even though it makes me angry in a lot of ways because
Right.
something shouldn't have happened. But like it didn't happen to me. And
Right.
it's not, I don't feel like it helps her by like continuing to be so like up in arms about it. And I'm not
Correct.
saying let it go, but like it's about her and her kids and her family and the people it affected. So I don't
Right.
feel like I should hold it for her.
Correct. I no, I'm very much in the same like school of thought. And she says like herself, she's like, I used to be so upset with him that like all he cared about was like leaving this like pristine wrestling like legacy. And, like that's all I like he like cared about. And like that
Hmm.
she's like, why aren't you more concerned with like being a good father? And she's like, the older I get, the more I realize like that was the only thing he like knew how to like put himself in. So
Yeah.
like he wanted to leave something um that his kids could like look back and like be proud of. Now,
Hmm.
granted, like that's always going to have, a grain of salt in it,
Hmm.
obviously.
Hmm.
But they did, they do show that clip of them like going through his stuff, and like, they
Oh
do
yeah,
look like they
true.
are, like generally like enjoying, the trip down memory lane. It's not
Hmm.
um maybe it had the effect that he wanted, probably not, but I think if you really really truly believe like you are put on whatever earth to do one thing, and you somehow like you do that one thing, like did you win? I don't know, like
Mm-hmm.
that who are we to say, really. Like,
Yeah.
but I know, but I'm very much in the same school of thought. It's just like I'm not going to like be on this crusade because it very much so seems like the people that are the most relevant to this don't hold that
Right.
kind of hatred. And how could
Right.
they? That was their husband, their father, you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? It's
Their
not
friend. Yeah.
right. It's not it goes back to the whole separating the artist situation. But
Yeah. And she says, like, people need to let it go, let my kids heal. And if you do talk about it, talk about CTE, talk about the signs of depression, don't knock him. And this is when she said, we could have perpetuated it. He could have come back, but we ended it. We did the right thing, and my kids were better off without him around. Which is hard, again, hard to say. Like, it's hard to
right,
say that, like, my kids were better off without their father. Like, that's a crazy statement to make, but it's also maybe not true. Like,
right,
that's her story. But like you said, she ends it with saying, or ends her part of it by saying, like, I was always upset about the wrestling thing, but I realized that was the legacy he wanted to leave for his children, and it'll literally live on forever.
forever. Yeah.
Um, and then the documentary ends with McFoley saying he's largely forgotten now, but those who saw him in his prime will never forget him. Bruce Springsteen said, trust the art, not the artist. Tommy had a canvas and he was brilliant. He's not the first, nor will he be the last to suffer for the sake of his art. You become a bigger star than you ever imagined, and then you pay for it every day for the rest of your life.
Crazy. Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
So insane. Um, so like just beyond. I like I said earlier, I totally want to watch like the other documentary about him as well. But let's talk about, if we have the time, let's talk about WrestleMania 2. So
Ooh.
we wanted to talk about, which crazy, WrestleMania 2?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Two? Wild.
I know.
Beyond. Which also I just found out, my brother-in-law's a closet fan. We talk about this all the time, where we like have to edge them out of the closet into being okay to talk
Literally.
about
Welcome
wrestling.
into the light.
He told me that his dad took him to the movie theaters to watch the very first WrestleMania. And like, how precious is that? Anyway,
That's so cute.
um, so we wanted to do this. This was Xavier's brilliant idea to compare an actual OG Dynamite Kid match to the new and upcoming Dynamite Kid, his nephew,
Hmm.
which there are some insane similarities.
Right.
So this is a tag team match, obviously the British Bulldogs. It's against Greg the Hammer Valentine and
Hmm.
Miss Girl Brutus Beefcake. What a name.
Yes.
That took me out. And they called him
Um.
like the beefer. Like they had so
Oh,
many
so
like
many names.
iterations of beef.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
basically Arby's in this piece. Like really crazy.
It's insane. He also has his own dark side of the ring. He was very good friends with Hulk Hogan.
Uh
Some would say he has some delusions about his importance in things.
I love when people have delusions about that.
But yeah, yeah, yeah. But he was, he's solid dude, solid wrestler, I'll say.
I mean, literally also solid. Just so
Yes.
solid. Such a
Beefcake
brick.
was fitting, yes.
Beefcake, Brutus Beefcake, probably the most fitting name for a human being I've ever seen. I didn't necessarily like it, but like, because
No,
it just
yeah,
made me like, it scratched an itch I wasn't really planning on itching, but
yeah, he goes
it
by
was
the barber
apropos.
later on. It's Brutus the Barber Beefcake.
Oh, he keeps Beefcake. Doesn't
Oh, he
drop the
keeps
Beefcake, he
keeps Beefcake.
hyphenates. Hmm.
Adds.
He said, more bees.
Yeah.
That's crazy. He's like, I love an alliteration. Let's keep it going.
Hmm.
Um, So first of all, the British Bulldogs are escorted to the ring by Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah.
He's wearing a salmon leather suit, which is just
Just amazing.
Ozzy Osbourne, insane.
Right, right,
Escorted
right,
to the
right.
ring, so crazy, and he gets to stay on the sidelines the whole time. And they're also escorted by Captain Louis Albano, who I realize is the guy who was in the Slammies, who were like, who is this insane man? That's him. And it tracks
Yeah.
insane. Gorilla Monsoon is on commentary.
Hmm.
Loved to see my boy Gorilla Monsoon on commentary, and he ate it up. He was
Ate it
so
up.
good.
So good. So good. So
He
good.
was because there was one point where they were getting it. He goes, and that's a 1, 2, and that's all there is. I was like, why do I love that?
I
Why do
love
I
that.
love that? And that's all there is. They had 2 refs, one in the ring, one on the outside of the ring, in case things got, there was a little hanky panky outside the
Yeah,
ring.
there was many a manager, many an extra person. Yeah, they were.
There was a lot of auxiliary. But the Dynamite Kid is the first experience I've ever seen him actually wrestling in a match. It was very, I felt, Davy Boy heavy. Like I felt like he
Yes, this match
was,
generally, yeah.
yeah, the primary. But when Dynamite Kid got in there, he is so, I literally think, God, he is so fast, like bouncing off the rings. And Gorilla Monsoon, he goes, clocked in at about 100 miles an hour. Dynamite Kid jumping off
No.
the ropes, and I was like, no, literally. Um, the snap suplex.
Amazing. And you can see, you can really like if you watch Chris Benoit, you can see like that snap suplex lifted, the chops lifted, the clothesline lifted, the diving headbutt lifted. Like
Copy
he
paste, copy paste, copy paste.
emulated this dude. And it's so crazy. It's just because like he was so hard to contend with because he was the first of his kind. He was so fast and
Yep.
just so intense that like people were just like, what is this? And I just thought it was really cool to see because we've only seen the British Bulldog team with Owen Hart,
Yes.
which we love. We absolutely we
Of
stand big
course.
fans.
Big fan.
But it is really cool to kind of see the like original like British Bulldogs,
Oh, I
like
loved it.
because you can really see like they were a unit, like they were one, and like
Hmm.
um they they worked so well together. Their like speed is insane. Bulldog is of course like the
Oh
muscle of the
God,
group.
crazy.
But it's just it was just kind of just a masterclass in just who they like are. Like just
Yeah.
the two of them. So good.
I loved them so much. And it's crazy to see the Bulldog because he still does things then that he does now. So like when he gets like I don't know what to do like a
The
drop
kip up? Oh wait, what are you talking
where he
about?
like he gets them up. They're like fully upside down, but like straight up. And I always say the person who's upside down has to have the most insane core strength. Like
Oh,
he just
oh,
like
oh.
lifts them up and then like falls back and
Oh,
like
God.
drops
Oh,
them.
so a suplex. Like it's a suplex, but it's like a
Not a snap suplex.
no, the snap one, the
There's
speed is what.
German, there's snap, there's
Yes,
the
there's belly to
Tazplex,
there's
belly to
lots
belly.
there's lots of suplexes. But yeah, it's that one's usually like an over the head like suplex. Like usually the one where they like hold them, like where the
Yes.
British Bulldog is
Okay.
like walking around for like 10 minutes. Hello, walking around for like 10 minutes and then just drops them. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, so there's that. And then there's also he does that thing where he just fully bench presses somebody and like
Mm-hmm. Drops
so
them.
crazy. He's so strong, so strong. At one point, Greg Valentine just had to mention this, does that Farouk leg twitch that I hate so much, where he gets
Mm.
like bopped and his leg is just like,
Oh yeah, it's
I'm
like
like,
a
why?
weird way of
Hate it.
selling.
Just had to mention it. Um, but basically, what happens is Dynamite Kid is on the outside, at the corner, and he's like positioned up and he has his head leaning in. Davy Boy, I don't know, I don't know if this was intentional or not. I could not understand if this was just like, this is what we're doing, this is the move we're doing. But basically, Davy Boy throws Hammer into Dynamite's head,
Hmm.
essentially headbutting him, and gets the pin. And they
Right.
become tag team champions.
Hmm. Very cool. Very fun.
And so,
And
yeah,
it's
Dynamite is like launched and like just
like
basically deceased.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was like an like playing Super Smash Bros. Like when your character just gets like launched off the screen. Just woo.
Yeah. Bye, girl. Yeah. Um, and I watched like their little interviews after, so cute, but Dynamite couldn't even say one single thing because he was basically deceased.
Right.
But Davey Boy is just like, we said if we won this match, we would stay in America. So guess what? We're staying in America, which is
Hmm.
funny because right now he's on this train where we're watching in 1997 where he's
And
like,
he like
America
is the worst.
is the
Yeah.
worst place on the planet.
Hmm.
I hate it here.
Hmm.
So it's just funny. But this other match, which is Tommy Billington, the Dynamite Kid, the nephew of the Dynamite Kid,
Right.
versus Dax Harwood. I will say what I noticed, and the commentator said it, it's like the clothesline. And the
Hmm.
the clothesline, I don't know if we talked about this on I'm like already losing track of time, like what we spoke about, but like if we talked about this on the show or we talked about this before we started, where the clothesline is like instead of meeting in the middle,
Oh
like
yeah,
they're
he
so
follows him
close,
in. Yeah.
follows him in, and it's so hardcore. So nephew Tommy does that clothesline, and I literally thought it's like, oh, that's just like the Dynamite Kid. And they said, oh, the Dynamite Kid style clothesline, or like one of the announcers like said that.
Yeah, yeah. It's like classic, like that is the Dynamite Kid clothesline. It is the one that is he is known for. So,
Yeah.
um,
The snap
the
suplex
snap
again.
suplex, amazing. I like that he didn't do the diving headbutt. I like that
Yes, me too.
he mixed it up and did like the elbow, which looked amazing.
So good.
But like just first of all, he looks like his uncle. Like just
Yeah.
he looks scarily like his uncle. It
Yes.
was really surprising to see because it was just like that when I saw like them advertise the match, I was just like, is he back from the dead? That's
Yeah, because
crazy. Because
same
it looks
exact name, looks just like him. The
mhm.
tights are even kind of similar to the original Bulldogs
Right. He
tights.
comes out with the like the OG British Bulldogs, like the
Dee, 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 lee, lee, dee, dee.
so good. And like
Yeah.
it was just such a fun, like full circle kind of thing. To
Yeah.
see like what well, I mean, I don't want to he's new and well, he's new to AEW. He's been wrestling for a little bit, but he's generally like new in his career. But um to have the Dynamite Kid name be given an opportunity to um kind of put a newer kinder connotation to it is nice,
Yeah.
especially considering what he did for the sport and like
Yes.
his contributions in that regard and how they are really not talked about. And I get it. We get it to an
Mm-hmm.
extent, but I think this gives them an opportunity to kind of uh leave it in a better place than they found it, and that's really really cool.
I agree with that.
And something that like really could only be done, within the family. And like they were
Yes.
trained by Bret Hart and like others in the Hart family, so it's not like um they're not coming out of nowhere. They're getting quite the education as far as like technicality goes.
Mm-hmm.
But I just thought it was such a cool little like juxtaposition to kind of see, and also like when I was looking for episodes to watch. I was like, who is somebody that is like so influential, that one has a little bit of a checkered past, but is also like so influential and relevant today, not just because of what he's contributed, but just because like his name is very much alive and well,
Mm-hmm.
and is
Literally.
yeah, and is like literally Tommy Billington is alive and well. And I don't want to speak for him obviously, but I don't think you take on something that big and something with that much infamy if you don't think you're gonna ride it out. You're gonna
Mm.
really try and make something of this. So I'm
Mm.
very very excited to see like where his career goes just based on the match I
Yeah.
saw. I watched the like the longer version. You can watch it on YouTube. It's AEW Collision from like last week, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it is just the tenacity of this kid is really really cool. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's fun to see because it is very much like in the same vein as his uncle. It is very like you're gonna have to like kill me to keep me down, and that is pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Very cool. And
Not gonna lie.
honestly, we say all the time, like the sins of the father do not beget the son, or whatever the quote is. It's like
Right.
it's if it sucks when somebody whose dream was wrestling might or dream was anything, like might be influenced by like whatever your father did or whatever your mother
Right.
did or whomever, like uncle, family member, whatever, like if that because you are not them.
Correct.
Like you are a part of them, but you're not them. So
Mhm.
like it's cool. And I wrote this too, like the fans really embraced him. Like they
Oh,
were
they were
literally
they were
chanting
into it.
Dynamite. They were so happy to see him. Like he was amazing. And literally at the end of the match, like Dax, like they fist bump.
Yes.
And he's like, respect. You've earned my
Dax
respect.
and Cash are very much under the wheelhouse of very much in the umbrella of like the Hart
Dynamite Kid.
Foundation.
Oh, Hart
And
Foundation.
like yeah, I could like you can always I liken a lot of wrestlers today. They are either like Bret Hart students or they're like Shawn Michaels students. Or if they're like big men, then they
Mm.
get their own like category. But
Yeah,
like
they're over there. Yeah.
generally, like you have your Bret Hart school of wrestling, and then you have your Shawn Michaels school of wrestling, and they are very
Mm.
great when they clash. But they are different philosophies, and
Mm.
like like your CM Punk is a Bret Hart guy.
Yes.
Your examples, people listening, Dolph Ziggler in TNA now, but is a like Shawn Michaels guy. Daniel Bryan was actually trained by Shawn Michaels,
Love
but
that
is
guy.
also a very, very big Bret Hart like student. Like
Because
he's
I was
just
gonna
one of
say he
those like
gives me Bret Hart energy in a lot of
yes, he
ways.
wrestles in a very similar style to like Bret Hart. Yeah, I guess if we're gonna liken it, he wrestles more like Bret Hart than he does Shawn Michaels, but he was
Mm.
actually trained like in San Antonio by Shawn Michaels. So,
That's freaking awesome.
mhm.
This might be wrong.
Seth Rollins,
Seth Rollins sometimes gives me Shawn Michaels vibes.
I agree very much so.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yay! Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
because the fashion, the verbiage, the promos, like what he says, and I haven't seen
The
much, but I'm like,
athleticism, that's very much that is a like a Shawn Michaels like student. You can just kind of like you can I don't know, for me at least, that's how I like categorize a lot of wrestlers when I'm watching them is like, oh, are they like a Bret Hart student or are they a Shawn Michaels student? Like in my head, like you
mm,
can I don't know. For me, I can kind of tell who they grew up like idolizing
I
because
love
it's one
that.
of them, you
I love that.
know.
I love that skill of yours.
Thank you, thank you.
Love that. All right.
That
Well,
guys, that was
guys,
it.
that's our episode on the Dynamite Kid. Thank you so much for listening as always. And if you haven't checked out our episodes with our two guests that we've had, two are probably two of my favorite conversations I've ever had in my life, period. Like not outside of the podcast, just really exciting and amazing. So if you haven't seen those, please check those out. We really got an education.
Hmm, hmm.
Um, but yeah, this has been another exciting edition of the New to Wrestling podcast after dark. We will see you when we see you next time. We'll see you on another regular show or after dark, wherever we see you. We're happy to do it. And yeah, we'll see you there.
All right, have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.